this might be one of my favorite movies of 2023. If you miss how they used to make films in the 1970s, then this is the movie for you. A lot of the stuff we talk about here on the show is like nerd culture shit. It's like a lot of comic book, but the industry is like dominated by that shit, right?
Right.
The movie industry is dominated by franchises and like the next franchise and the next universe and this and that. I found it to be very refreshing, like almost like I forgot what real movies were like, actually.
Yeah. This movie's like an instant timeless movie. Like it's got that feel to it.
I don't understand.
That's glaringly apparent.
I can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
This was just finally like a good movie, I feel like, that you don't really get too much of these days. The story is not like a huge breakthrough idea, but it was heartfelt and like pretty real.
The chemistry between those three was amazing.
But this is a simple story. This is about a cranky history teacher who works at a remote prep school, and he's forced to remain on campus over the holiday break with a few students, which turns into one student, and a grieving cook. It's just people sort of like empathizing with one another.
This is a really good movie that tells we all have our biases and our prejudices.
Yeah.
And when you get to know somebody who you may have a bias or prejudice against, you soon learn to realize that they're just a person too, just like you, and you can actually relate to them more than you would think if you would just not be so stubborn all the time with your biases and prejudices.
Keep wanting to say like people learning to be a certain way, but I don't know if it was really that, because they sort of had those tendencies to begin with. Paul Giamatti, like his character Paul Hunnam, like he's like, he's a cranky old dude whose life probably didn't go the way he wanted it to. You get the sense that he was like scared to take the next step, so he kind of like reverted to what he knew. He's been working at this school that he himself went to as a child, and he says it feels like home. Like he just kind of stays with what he knows and really doesn't like branch out. Which is why the chemistry with Angus, played by Dominic Sessa, is so good, because Angus is sort of like, he's like full of life and like wanting to like do shit and whatever, and he's like kind of forcing Paul's hand to like do different things and like be adventurous and whatnot. But both of them are like pretty nice people, right? Like they're not scumbags. Like this is not a movie about like a character learning to like accept somebody for who, like they're just nice people, really, is what it is. Like Paul Giamatti, he's again a little bit cranky and a little bit set in his ways, but he's still a nice guy.
He comes across as a fair person, obviously stubborn and cranky, but seems to be fair.
And Angus, he's presented as like a troubled teen, but he's not troubled at all. Like he just like he's had
some shit.
Yeah, he's had a trauma and doesn't really have like a support system that he needs.
Yeah, he's a neglected teen. Yeah, his parents sent him off to boarding school, and rather than be able to go home and spend time with his family, she would rather run off with her new boyfriend and go on a holiday and leave him to fuck off at prep school. Like he's just neglected as well.
Yeah, they don't give her enough of like a story, the mother, which I guess she doesn't really need one. But like what happened to his dad and her husband, like is traumatic for both of them. So he's not a bad kid, and you see the way he acts like towards the Vietnamese student who like he was crying and wet the bed or whatever. Like he was nice to him. And he was nice to the other kids. Like, he had a little bit of beef with the one guy, but that guy was a piece of shit, Teddy. So Angus is a nice guy. Paul's a nice guy. And then Mary, like, she's just also nice. And she's just, like, she lost her son in Vietnam. So she's, like, a grieving mother.
They do all have the one thing in common, which is, like, they're all kind of alone. Like, they share that kind of bond of loneliness.
I think there is an overall message towards the end of it that doesn't really hit with kids, because they don't really understand that this takes place during the Vietnam War,
right?
Where like he makes the sacrifice to take the blame because the kid such that the kid doesn't have to go to military school, because he knows what that means. We all are supposed to know what that means, because what happened to Mary's son is basically you're getting drafted. There's no way around it. This is the Vietnam War. Like you're dying. You're probably not coming back.
I saw it more of like he was just like
he became like a dad to this kid.
Not even. I think he did, but No, he definitely did. I just think it was more of
he saw that this kid was neglected. Like his mom would rather go on a date with her boyfriend, and like he kind of became a guy that this kid needed some attention. He's acting out because he's being left alone, and he has like Dan said, he has there's no support to fall back onto. And I think Paul's character obviously sort of slowly learns that. And that's why he gives him some grace and takes the fall for the mistakes that were not his own.
I think too is like he probably obviously knew he was going to get fired, and like he needed that in his own life. He needed
Sure.
to be like forced out of his comfort zone. Yeah, that's pretty telling. The scene where he runs into one of his old Harvard classmates, and the guy was like, "Oh,
yeah.
I'm glad to see you landed on your feet," and he like lied about his whole thing. And it's like, you know, almost like the Walter White thing, right? Where like he's embarrassed about like where his life has gone compared to the other person, which was stupid.
Yep.
Because obviously he's a successful individual. He just chose to like stay in this thing that he knew. But yeah, either way, I don't know. It just was a very simple, like nice thing to watch. In fact, I actually got choked up a lot of times in the movie for no particular reason whatsoever. There's nothing really sad in the movie. Like obviously, you know, her situation is sad. Mary's, she's played by Divine Joy Randolph, by the way, who was brilliant.
Yep.
She like her story is sad, but there's not a lot of like sadness in the movie. I don't think. Like I never really got that sense that it's like it's where it's like there's sad things happening. Like
Not really.
yeah, the kid's like experience is kind of sad. His dad freaked the fuck out or whatever, had like a mental breakdown, and it is what it is. His mom kind of sucks. That's sad, but there's never like sadness that you would cry. You know, she has a bit of a breakdown at the Christmas party because her son dead, and it's the first Christmas that she's having without him. That's sad, but that's not there's nothing basically in this movie that evoked crying in me, but I was crying because of just the sentimentality of the movie and of the story and the just between the characters, like, which is kind of sad in that the things that are showcased in this movie are actually like missing from like life, I feel like. So that was kind of like a standout to me, is that like just being nice to people is like a rare commodity these days.
I really felt for the teacher at the Christmas party when he was like, you know, he was kind of vibing with the other teacher lady.
Yeah.
And, you know, but then her boyfriend opens the door and it's like, oh, fuck. Because it kind of felt like he was kind of like, you know, there was going to be like a little something there. And then it's just, nope, she was just being nice.
But that's the thing. I didn't even take it as a sad thing, right?
It wasn't, like, I mean, it wasn't, but you know, you feel for him a little bit.
That's one of the things I thought that was cool about the movie, is because but the movie is just about kindness. Like she was kind to him and he was like in turn being kind. Like, wow, like I didn't really ever talk to this person before, but she's really cool. So that's kind of how
she was human nature.
He actually thought she was annoying at the beginning, and she brought him cookies and he was like annoyed and all that. So yeah. So
that's the thing, is like there's just a kindness to this movie, and I guess that's why I got a little teary-eyed throughout it. Like, again, there's nothing really sad that happens for me anyway. It was just more of that, of like, you know, people just having compassion for one another and the hardships that they've been through. That shouldn't feel rare, but it does, for me at least.
Well, division and vitriol is becoming more commonplace, I feel like. This is social media rots out the core of society, but
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
I don't think it needed to be 2 hours and 15 minutes long, but I'm on the stop it with the 2-hour movies, please.
Yeah, but you guys are a little bit crazy about shit like that. Like, this is a great story that I didn't feel the time.
Oh, it is. No, it is.
Of course, it doesn't have to be 2 hours and 3, you know, however long it was. I don't think it affected the movie in a negative way. This is a character story. Like, this is like what good writing is. This is what I'm trying to say, is like, this is missing from movies nowadays. Like, you don't get this shit. It's all superficial bullshit and CGI and like big explosions. This is just a movie about people, and that's beautiful. And like, time doesn't matter in a movie like this. It's a very non-traditional, I feel, story in the sense that like there is no like A to B, or like go from being a piece of shit to a nice guy or whatever. It's like there's none of that. It's just like this thing happens and then it ends. Like I don't know. The movie just felt like very real to me. It didn't have like a very real story. It didn't have a very like a traditional like story in the sense of where like something, it was just like, it is what it is. Like they go back to like the way life is. He gets fired for an obvious reason and then like takes off, and like that's it. And, you know, so I really like that. And obviously,
it was just a series of events where you observe human understanding.
Yeah, you're just observing human behavior.
The right thing to do.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to describe it. You're really just observing human behavior in this movie. And again, I think that's a rare gem in today's superficial gimmick bullshit movie world that we live in. It was, you know, it was a very thoughtful movie, I thought, in that way. The directing was brilliant. I really liked it a lot. The cinematography also I want to talk about too is great. This movie felt like it was made in the 1970s. I mentioned that like a little bit earlier. If you missed the way movies were in the 70s, this takes place in the 70s, but it feels like it was made in the 70s, which was awesome.
It's very, super charming. I feel like that's hard to do.
I really, really liked it. I thought it was amazing. The directing was brilliant. Cinematography was brilliant. The acting was brilliant. I think this is an Oscar-worthy movie, like across the board.
I mean, it's killing it at the awards.
Yeah, it's like cleaning up.
7 BAFTAs, 91 awards so far out of 180 nominations.
But yeah, I don't know. There's just a movie about like humanity kind of, and it was just like a very simple look at that. And I thought it was great and refreshing and very warm-hearted movie. I think that's the best way to describe it.
It's got a little bit of both. It's a little cold-hearted at times, and it's very warm-hearted at times. That's what I think makes it hit so well. Is you get the pendulum of the emotion of humanity. It's great in that aspect.
And while I don't think there was like an overall like message or meaning or anything, I guess if you wanted to put something on it, it's like kind of a reflection about like how people sort of get trapped in certain things, maybe traditions or habits or past circumstances and stuff like that. And how like the importance of like kind of trying to break out of that, especially with Paul Giamatti's character. He was like very trapped in like in that. Obviously grieving is a little bit different. That's something that's a little bit harder to sort of move on from. Like her kid died. He lost his dad. He's not even 18 yet. Like they make a point to talk about that. And he was kind of just like dumped off at this school by his mother. It's got an 8.0 on IMDb. A solid 8. I would bump that up. I would give this an 8.5.
I honestly don't think I would. I don't know what I would change about this movie. I guess I would just give it an 8 too.
That's fair.
Well, I'm with Dan, and this is a wonderful story about compassion and understanding on the human spectrum.
Oh, yeah, this movie's certainly a gem in a sea of CGI. And I love you guys know me. Like I love Marvel movies. I love that shit. But like, it was just really refreshing to see like an actual movie for once. Like it's been a while.
It's a palate cleanser for sure.